Welcome to The Current Buzz, the podcast where we break down what's happening now at Oklahoma Electric Cooperative and OEC Fiber and why it matters to you.
Each episode, we're bringing you practical insights, behind-the-scenes conversations, and real-world answers to the questions our members and subscribers are asking. Thanks for tuning in. Let's jump into today's conversation. Welcome to this episode of The Current Buzz. This is Rural Roads, EVs, and the future of charging. Today, we welcome Seth Christ from Francis Energy to help us unpack the realities of the modern EV landscape.
But first, we kick off each episode with the top 3 things you need to know. Today, I want to talk a little bit, it's July, it's still pretty hot, but there are still things you can do to save on your summer energy usage. The number one thing is your thermostat. This time of year, your HVAC is about half of your electric bill. So adjusting your thermostat up to, we say 78, 76, anything higher than what you keep it at all the time, where you sleep at a cooler temperature, will help you save more money. I use ceiling fans. Ceiling fans are a great asset. They help circulate air, makes you feel cooler. So feel free to run those. They're a low wattage thing. And of course, if you've got blinds or shades, close them, right? We don't want that sun coming in and heating up everything in your house, and then your air conditioner has to make up all that load. So cover your windows and adjust your thermostat.
And you can sign up for text alerts if your usage does get too high. We call them just high usage alerts. They are in your MyOEC mobile app. You go in, you add your phone number, you give us permission to text you, you go into your notifications, and you just toggle on a high usage alert. You can set a threshold, so anytime your usage does get higher than normal, it can send you a text, and then if it does get to that point, you can go turn on a ceiling fan and do some other things like Daniel said.
Also, even though OEC Fiber has been around almost 10 years, which is crazy to think about, we're still opening up new neighborhoods all the time. So if you'll go to oecfiber.com to sign up and see if it's available in your area.
So welcome, Seth, to The Current Buzz. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Francis Energy.
Yeah, so at Francis Energy, I'm currently the Chief Strategy Officer. So really looking at how we utilize technology to service our customers' needs and to help everybody move around and do their daily lives and sometimes save a little money. So
for listeners who may not really follow what's happening with the EV infrastructure and everything that's happening with EVs, we've been talking about it now for the better part of 10 years, probably.
Yep.
But a lot has happened, both with legislation and everything. Just paint kind of a broad picture of what the EV landscape is now as we're looking at it. Are there a lot of people adopting EVs? Is it what we expected it to be about 10 years ago?
Absolutely. And I think you guys are part of Francis' story, right? We started in 2018, probably working with you all to figure out how we could adopt this technology. So, but a lot has changed. I think the majority of what's changed back then is, is an EV right for me? Can I, as an individual, use that? Kind of in the last 5 years especially, it's more changed into which one might be the right EV for your daily activities or a specific use case you might have. So, and that has basically been changed a lot by options. So there's a lot more availability. Before, even 10 years ago, there's only limited commuter cars, and now I drove here today in a pickup truck. So it looks just like a regular pickup truck and has all the features that you'd want for that. So it's really, I think, getting more options out there, understanding how to use that. The places to fill up or charge your vehicle is drastically increased. And then OEMs kind of looking a little bit into the future are working towards, the kind of holy grail, which is under $30,000 EV that can go 250 to 350 miles. And so those are on the production lines currently are set up in the factories, like Ford, I know, is doing some big things there, and others looking at maybe 2027 before those are hitting the dealerships and availability.
That'll be huge.
Yeah.
You're right. I would say 2018, there might have been less than 5 EV options. Right. Now there's probably 25 to 30, it feels like. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got a couple options now. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions still with EVs? Is it charging infrastructure, readiness of the grid? What are some things you're still seeing with misconceptions?
I mean, especially for like me as I learned this, it wasn't just a matter of like, hey, we're going to go do something. It's how do we understand it? How do we drive the EVs and do that? And I think the biggest misconception that I talk to my friends and family about, even when they ask me, is, well, I can put X amount of miles or distance into my gasoline vehicle. What people don't really understand is you have to go get the gasoline at a very specific, or diesel at a very specific location, where the fuel for an EV, if you will, is literally everywhere. It's like in this room. So it's in your garage already. And then it's not a matter of needing to go somewhere to fill up all the time, but you might have workplace charging, you might have a home charger, even the 110 outlet can do some commuter miles. And so it's not a matter of I need to have 500 miles every single day, because not everybody drives. There are a few people that drive 500 miles in a passenger vehicle every day, but I commute about 42 miles a day, have a 320-mile range, so I don't even really think about it. Now, every once in a while, I forget to charge, and hey, I'm finding myself at a public charger, and that's where Francis comes in, right? But I've worked with my local utility provider to figure out how to get that home charging in, and it's really just kind of an afterthought. If you charge your phone up, you can charge your car up, and maybe you don't plug your phone in every night, but some people do, and it's just really simple.
Well, and back then, range anxiety was, and I'm assuming still is, a deterrent to people kind of making the leap into EVs, even if they are interested. Is that still, are you finding a main deterrent of people not really wanting to adopt and buy an EV, even though it might fit their lifestyle? They're just kind of still nervous about the range.
Yeah, I think it's more over education on that, or understanding what that really means. Again, I think the number one thing that Francis is working on, and has been from day one, is that last kind of excuse, or that last reason I can't go do this one thing I do every month or every year. Can't go see grandma at holiday or something. Or for us, is how do we get to our family vacations, right? And then how do we get through certain areas? And so what we've been working on since we started a long time ago is completing what we did here in Oklahoma, putting chargers every 50 miles. Kind of, if you build it, will people buy? The answer is absolutely yes. Oklahoma has a tremendous number of EVs, and that's continuing to grow. But how do we do that in other states? How do we put those dots on the map so you can get to those more scenic, or get through the non-major metro areas, which have a lot more charging than they did a few years ago? And so that's really, I think, key. To understand where those are, how those work, and in the last even few months, Google Maps and all these other programs and the infotainment systems in these newer vehicles, it kind of plots that out for you now. So it's really, really becoming a lot easier.
So paint us a 2030 picture of Francis Energy's full service territory. Name the single biggest threat getting there.
Yeah, so 2030, seems like it's a long ways away, but kind of around the corner here. Where we're kind of looking at is not only looking at major metros now, as we've been hyper-focused on those smaller communities through the multiple states, and really working really closely with the utilities and the cooperatives to do that, is kind of ring fencing those major metros or minor metros, and continuing building that out while we look for new technological partners. We've been working really closely with Tesla recently. We'll talk more about that. To find those needed destinations, those midpoints where people's batteries do get a little low, and when they need to have a service territory there, and still filling in those dots. Because ultimately, as individuals buy new vehicles, those used vehicles need to be brought down to other marketplaces, and they have some really excellent prices on used vehicles right now. So they're coming off leases over the next couple of years. A huge number of vehicles will be available. And so it's really, in the next 5 years, Francis, continuing to grow. We're developing sites in about 30 states right now. We're live, and I'll double check, but around 15. It changes every day. We're turning a site on every so often, using some federal programs and some other opportunities. But it's really just continuing to serve the kind of the mid-continent region as we get pulled more and more towards the coastal states, and the heavily populated areas as well.
15 states, and 10 years ago it was literally us, just Oklahoma.
Right. At one point, Oklahoma was the best state. It was voted the best state to own an EV.
We had the largest charging network per capita at one point. You don't think that when you think Oklahoma, but
right. But it's thanks to Francis Energy and others who invested in the state. Probably took advantage of some grants or tax credits or things like that. But speaking of the Francis charging network, what happens if one of those does go down? If a charger goes down, what happens in like the next 30 minutes after that? Do you know right away? How long does it take to get it back up and running?
Yeah, so we run 24-hour active monitoring. That goes to our operations center, which is in Tulsa. There's live people there working on that. We, on a majority of the stations, have, getting information every few seconds from those stations. And that allows us to, in the first 24 hours, diagnose kind of what's going on. We try to implement some self-healing solutions where we have a database of, hey, this happened, this event occurred. What do we need to do in the next few minutes? Can we do this remotely? And we've been really focused on that as we grew from, rural Oklahoma, which people don't think. But when we put all those stations in, it was like over 2,000 miles to drive to them all. So to even do service, and we're not even leaving the state, if you mapped all the dots out. So from day one, it was always that geographical challenge. So we knew we had to push towards remote self-healing and remote diagnostic. Currently, we're sitting around 85% of all challenges. We can mitigate those remotely, and we're striving to go further with adding new technology pieces and more information. So whether it be cameras or smart switch gear that we can, toggle remotely. And sometimes, like anything, like when your phone's acting up, maybe just turn it off and turn it back on.
It's crazy how much that actually works.
Yeah. Don't tell IT.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that has been really important for us to keep that customer satisfaction going. And we've achieved some of our highest customer satisfaction recently. We really kind of focused on how do we keep people on the road.
So the electric grid in much of this region was really built to power a bunch of air conditioners being turned on at the same time on a hot summer afternoon. Does adding all of this charging and encouraging EV ownership challenge that grid reliability and supply?
I think that's maybe where Francis differs a little bit. And on day zero, before we even consider building a site, we're having conversations with folks like OEC, and we're building plans out, and we're trying to develop these relationships so that we know, hey, this area maybe is not quite ready infrastructurally to handle a DC fast charger. And the DC fast charger has got to come first before, people are going to think about charging at home. So those chargers are getting much larger over time. When we first started, maybe a 50 kilowatt charger was quick or satisfied the need, and now we're pushing to 300 to 500 kilowatt charging to a vehicle. So you're talking like neighborhoods of houses going through a cord into a vehicle for a short period of time. So we want to make sure, how do we manage that? And I think it's really planning. And we've done a lot of work with you all, I think, and other Western Farmers cooperatives to look at how does that change? So, in planning, where is their capacity and where isn't their capacity? And then how do we mitigate that? We want to make sure we offer charging for all times of the day, but we also want to make sure we work around peak times. And so we do some price changing to encourage folks, if they want to save a few dollars, like maybe come after peak times. And so those are big strategies right now, is working really closely with the power providers to ensure that there is adequate infrastructure, planning for the future, making sure it's not capped out, but there is additional capacity as these stations may need to grow, and placing maybe larger transformer pads, more tubing underground so that we can add more stations as the demand does grow.
So charging on peak rates, has that always been how EV charging's been priced? I owned one from about 2021 to 2023 or so, and I don't really remember that being talked about. Is that a newer development?
This has been surge pricing. I mean, if everybody's used it, a Lyft or Uber, has always been a way to maybe use a limited resource in a way. Maybe it's can be construed as something else, but for us, it's really using a limited resource. If there's a wait or wait times, which we're seeing now, which weren't a thing, a few years ago, is how can we encourage those that don't specifically aren't traveling through and aren't at the station at that time to maybe get a more favorable habit of going maybe a little bit later in the day or earlier in the day, whatever it might be. And so those have always been there in larger metro areas. And so we're starting to see that come here as the EV adoption has increased. There's more vehicles on the road.
I'm shocked there's wait times. That's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, essentially it's like a time of use rate, but for EV charging.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we've been doing that for a long time too. So
Right.
it does make sense. So we're talking about peak load. I think of batteries. Are batteries nice to have or a must have at these EV charging stations in rural communities?
Yes. In a way, yes, in a word. But really it's looking at what is it's kind of a challenging thing because economics are driving it. It's not a technological thing. Batteries are here. You can buy them. You see them all over the world, basically. It's can the economics of that system support that additional cost and those eventually the batteries, in a decade or so need to be replaced. So right now it's looking at the right location with the right incentives to maybe start a full demand response and or dispatch technology. And that's quite challenging at this time. I think it's very new. We're testing some of those facilities right now in Tulsa at our test facility. We have one on the test bank right now. So it's really more of an economical challenge than it is anything else. Is there enough throughput? Is there enough vehicles that need that station such that they
offset the price?
They offset all that.
So keeping with kind of the rural theme, Francis Energy has invested a lot in rural communities and equipping them for those who are interested in owning EVs, equipping them with power charging networks. What should someone who lives in a rural community, what are some other things they should consider if they're interested in purchasing an EV?
I know we work from day one on some websites and some guides, and I'm sure we can post those somewhere again, where it's really looking at a simple audit, like how many miles do you drive a day? Again, average American drives 40. We might be pushing 60 in Oklahoma, Texas, this area. Just distance or further, less traffic, you can just move further. So in a day, can the battery, handle your daily needs? And plus you need to have some overhead, or it's like a savings account. You got to have some extra in there because if you're going to do things like pull a trailer or run the heater, you like to be really warm in your car. Well, we don't have that gasoline or diesel fire going on, so we got to heat that with electricity. So it's really looking at, what you do in a day-to-day on your day-to-day average, and then, knowing on those days that may be really cold or you're going to do extra driving, is there a station that you can charge up for 10 minutes? The average charge time, I think, right now is 20 minutes, so it's not too drastically different than getting gasoline and a coffee and walking through the convenience store at this time. So it's really looking where those things are and then matching that with the vehicle range, the EPA range that'll be on the sticker if it's a brand new one, or you can get that from the used market of probably having it in this region of 250 miles or more.
Yeah, it's something I actually combated early on, were people that they were equating their time of travel for their commute versus just the miles. The EV doesn't care about time, right? It's sitting still. It's not using hardly anything, whereas a gas engine's still running. So I had a person that had a 90-minute commute, and I said, okay, but how many miles is that? And they're like, it's 35 miles. I'm like, okay. Then the car cares about 35 miles. It doesn't equate the same. So just
good point.
There's an education piece on that I thought was pretty interesting to see. Is there anything else they need to consider on an EV purchase that maybe they should evaluate? Or is it mainly just, can you get there with some extra?
Well, I think there's, again, daily miles versus the vehicle mileage. So, kind of doing that math. And again, there's some great tools online that can help you do that. Beyond that, then it's looking at, is home charging an option for me? So what does that process look like? What kind of incentives are available? A lot of the utilities, I think, including OEC, helps offset some of those costs. and then maybe even have some special rates. Again, encouraging people to even charge at home off peak, which I have at my house, and very, very affordable. It's so low, I don't even think about it. Like how much, I haven't even impacted my utility bill noticeably. Probably like $200 a year to drive 40 miles a day.
Right.
Again, really driving patterns is the big thing. And maybe not every home is ready with 2 or 3 vehicles that we have now with, if you have kids that are getting older, to go fully EV, but a majority of the vehicles could. But if you have one vehicle that you like to drive, 500, 600, 700, 1,000 miles or something in a day to go on some trip, maybe that stays gas for today.
Right. Yeah, we actually do have the EV rebate of $300 to help offset the infrastructure. A lot of these EVs come with the charger, so it's kind of help offset that cost. We don't really care what you use it for, but if you have an EV, you can apply for our rebate, and that's $300. And we do have the EV rate, which is basically 5 cents overnight. You can charge that car for 5 cents a kilowatt hour, and it's your whole house, but use that how you want. If you can schedule other things to run at 10 p.m., I'm happy with it, But you can charge, like we have a Chevy Bolt here, which is like a 60 kW battery at 5 cents. It's like nothing to $3 to charge this Bolt to go 240 miles. So it's crazy cheap to fuel.
Yeah. Well, and the good thing about that specific rate is anybody can be on it. We call it the EV rate. You don't have to actually own an EV. In fact, it's one of the better rates. So if you are a residential member and you're listening to this or watching this, go check out, shameless plug for our rate calculator on our website, okcoop.org/rate calc. You put in your account number. It's really cool. It pulls in 12 months of usage history, and it calculates what you would have spent on each of our 3 rates. Most of the time, that EV rate is going to be the least amount, and you can change to it right then. So really cool.
Yep. Shameless plug.
Yeah. Okay, so what does charging actually look like now from what you can tell from all the data you get from your chargers? Are most people charging while they're at work or charging at home or using public chargers? What does that look like?
Yeah, so Francis really focuses on, DC fast charging. We've done some kind of level 2 charging in the public space here in Oklahoma, and we're still evaluating that market. But really, we're hyper-focused on the DC fast charging, and there's specific times of the week in the year that are busier than others. And so again, looking at that back into that kind of pricing is how we can encourage folks to maybe charge on Monday instead of like Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday, whenever like it starts to tick up. We are entering like this holiday weekend is like, the big holiday start of everybody starts driving and going places and doing things that's nicer outside, so on and so forth. And that goes till pretty much December, and then everybody like hibernates in the winter. So we see all those patterns. But those are just general travel trends for the United States. With airline tickets and stuff being higher, we might see, this year might set some record numbers for, vehicles on the road and doing all the things as we travel through the summer months. But yeah, we see a lot of information about travel patterns and different things and try to look at that. But still, I think, the data that comes in, if you're here in the kind of mid-continent area where there's a lot of single-family dwellings, moreover on the coast where you might have a lot of multifamily dwellings, there's still that option to work with your local utility provider to have that kind of core charging done at home, or that most often if you have access to those facilities.
Yeah, that's interesting that the EV rebate is actually one of our most utilized. So I definitely know people are charging at home. We get tons of these rebates coming through now. So, and it's always been a well-used rebate. It's just, it's upticking like I never thought it would.
So what did we miss? Anything that you want to be sure that listeners know about EVs charging?
Let's talk about the Tesla. You mentioned that earlier. Let's talk about the what your partnership with them looks like.
Oh, yeah.
So that's been very recent and quick, but Tesla started what they call the Charger for Business program. And so it allows charge point operators like Francis and others to look at, owning and operating their technology over some of the other ones. The early days were we're figuring it out. That was kind of a locked ecosystem where now it's becoming more open. And so there was really only 2 states that had Michigan and Oklahoma that had more, non-Tesla ports on the DC fast front, on the public charging front, historically. So as we've been doing a refresh program here in Oklahoma, we started that We've been looking at it for several years, but the clock for some of the funds we used just ended, so we have an opportunity now to start on that. We've put in, with OEC Norman coming on, the OEC Norman site at Rudy's coming online here, that puts us at 100 ports. Tesla had about 150 ports in Oklahoma before that. So we've nearly doubled that. And through this summer, we're pushing to double the amount of Tesla ports that were already in Oklahoma. And that technology we're finding is that those vehicles are the largest number of EVs on the road that are actually traveling those distances, have 250 miles plus and all those things. Where some of the other, vehicles on the road might have been commuter vehicles, smaller batteries like the Chevy Bolts, and those are more probably charged at home, not necessarily taken on longer trips. And that ecosystem has been really interesting. But again, we're setting kind of record numbers with that technology and that provider. The big thing about that technology, I think, over traditional OEMs or automotive manufacturers is they had to focus on day one of where do you get a charge publicly, where all other OEMs maybe had, Chevron and the Shells of the world and all the gas stations, like, figure it out. That's kind of your thing. And so they're playing a little bit of catch up right now to incorporate those ecosystems into their infotainment systems, their applications, to get caught up to say, now we got to let people know that they can get an EV and they can get a charge too. Where getting gas or diesel is just kind of your own adventure. And now it's becoming more of an owned experience with the OEMs. And we've worked closely with Ford dealerships and others to, start those processes and put a lot of charging infrastructure at Ford dealerships over the last few years as well, in Oklahoma specifically and other states. And so those programs have been really exciting to see how a charge point operator like ourselves can really kind of move the needle, so to speak, on vehicle adoption by partnering with the manufacturers of those vehicles.
So early on, Tesla had basically that on lock. Their system told you where to charge, and now you're saying the other ones are catching up. So when you buy a Ford, it's going to tell you their stations and where you can charge, and that's awesome.
And will the superchargers work on non-Tesla EVs? Do you have to have an adapter usually?
So not all. So as Tesla's unlocking their network, some stations are definitely locked. So definitely you have to be careful there and make sure you're using those tools. Personal experience going to Austin, you might wait in line and your car might not work with that station. So Tesla has a lot of stations that they need to upgrade to that. We were fortunate to, and really wanted to push the envelope there with them to make sure that the stations we did purchase were open to all vehicles, all modern vehicles. And so we made sure there's a screen on there so that, if you have a credit card, you don't necessarily have to have the Tesla app or any other app or anything like that. You can go up there and, tap to pay and do all these things. And you can also see what's going on, where you might see that experience if you're a Tesla owner, where it's kind of all in app, it's all in your car, it's already figured out. But as you open it up to all the other OEMs, which we've done, we're seeing that we're getting about 8 times more non-Tesla cars on our stations versus the Tesla stations that are open to all.
Wow.
And it's been really exciting, I think, to see. And as we're working through those challenges, and there's still some education curves, and there's still some buttons to press here and there, we're learning about signage and different things that we need to do for those folks that might not want to have all these apps and different things. So make it really easy to use.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned you're opening up a new station at Rudy's here in Norman off Highway 9, which kind of is an interesting location. It's a couple miles off I-35.
Yeah, it's about 3 or 4.
Right? So it'll be interesting to see how much traffic that gets.
Well, it had the old school, the 50 kW chargers, back when we started this program. And he said earlier, I think there are 8 ports of Tesla charging going in there. And that's cool. That's live by the time this goes out. So that's really cool.
So definitely go check it out. Great barbecue.
Yeah.
20 minutes to spare, you can get fueled up and filled up and head on down the road.
Fueled up and filled up. I like it. And the other one, the Teslas are at the Crest, just north of here. Right. So, and those have been open for a little bit. How many sites do you have there? How many plugs there?
Just the 4.
4? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most utilized charging stations.
Definitely in Oklahoma, for sure.
That's cool. Norman, Oklahoma, a hub.
A hub of EVs. Are you seeing more as you're growing? So you mentioned 15 states, right? Is there a section or a region of the country that's just growing faster than some others?
Yeah, I mean, anything around a major metro where we have a large number of commuters. Those are growing very rapidly. The southern states, I'd say, probably grow a little bit faster. They don't have the cold weather to contend with, just naturally. And then anything everyone else does, California does everything else combined. So we're not really hyper-focused on California yet. We've been thinking about it, but we really have, we're from Oklahoma. We're headquartered here in the Midwest, or where we call this kind of
weird spot. Yeah.
What do we call ourselves? So we've been hyper-focused on that. We've made some great strides in Ohio and other locations with the federal program. We're turning on a whole bunch of stations right now in Kentucky that are non-Tesla based. So we've been pulled there. And we've been working with other operators to build out stations all over the United States, other OEMs and different things that are going on. So we've been kind of, in the central part of what charging in the public kind of looks like. And so it's rapidly growing really anywhere you can get power. We don't really contend with, data centers that are like mega loads and, often some other industrial park area. This is more, where can you have a good experience for like 10 to 20 minutes?
Right.
And have some sort of amenity. Can you grab a coffee? Can you, grab a bite to eat? We have some great partnerships with a lot of C-stores and different things across the nation that we'll see more stations come online this year. We've been growing really well even through all of these changes that we've seen over the last couple of years, but growth has been great. It's just figuring out where can you get in the ground, and everybody wants to go really fast with that. So
yeah, it's been crazy to watch from where we started in 2018 to where y'all have grown to now. So one of the early adopters.
And exciting because I mentioned I had an EV, I had a Mach-E, and I wouldn't mind going back to, I want like a self-driving one when I go back to an EV. So maybe a while. Yeah. But I think that would be really cool. So kind of exciting to know if you're traveling through the Midwest or the South, you're going to have some good access to charging. So that makes it, you had mentioned apps and different ways for people to find charging stations that work, but also not making people download a ton of apps. Is there one that makes the experience better, or what would you recommend?
Well, I think your primary app has got to be the OEM app. What car do you have? Like, focus on that app. That helps you a lot, whether it's your home charger and different things, and setting times of the day. Like last night I charged to come here and I made sure that my vehicle was charging, so didn't have any of those challenges, but also made sure it charged at the right time so I can get those great rates for the utility. So really focusing on that one is like the core one. If you want a Yelp-like experience, want to see what other people think of stations, then there's an app called PlugShare, which is very comparable to the restaurant app called Yelp, if you're familiar with that. And you can see pictures and comments and see what others think of it. Maybe some great tips are on there as well. A lot of these platforms are live, so you can see if a station is in maintenance or if it's full. You can see all those live updates. And as we continue to grow, and like Google Maps is doing some live updates, and those are recent, we'll be implementing those as well, where you can see if there's 8 of 8 stalls full or there's only one left, maybe, hey, go to the next one across town. So those are really great things that you don't necessarily get at a gas station. And I know we've all been to one that's been full and a really busy time and you're waiting for a few minutes, but those are kind of the concepts that really help people look and find like cost and all those availability for sure.
We've talked a lot about public charging, but in the experience I've seen, you're going to do 90% of this at home. That's the oops, I didn't charge, or I got a longer trip. But for the most part, you're charging at the house. You wake up with a full charge every day, and it's really not a big issue like people think it is. They worry about that, Well, if you got anything else want to throw in here?
No, I think this has been great. I know you guys have been great partners from the very beginning, and so we want to continue that, and we'll continue to look for new opportunities as we, look to power communities across the heartland and in the United States.
Appreciate the drive down from Tulsa. I know it wasn't a short trip.
That's easy. You just push a button and go,
Goals.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It was great chatting with you. We do end each episode by sharing just a couple of extra tips.
Remember to stay safe and aware. Don't swim around docks that run power to boat slips, or definitely around any marina, as any faulty weathering wired, could cause electrical issues. So just be careful where you're jumping the water and look around you.
And we highlight a community event that we support on each episode. Next month, August 15th, we are sponsoring the More Kiwanis Club car show. It's at the Warren Theater parking lot. Lots of stuff to do. If you are into cars, it's huge, so go check it out. A lot of craft vendors, food trucks, things to do for kids. Drawings happen every hour. Prizes, raffles, games, all kinds of things going on. Proceeds benefit the Children's Health Foundation, so go check it out August 15th.
Thank you all for joining us on today's episode. We'll see you next time on The Current Buzz.